Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for that. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Well, anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Oh, speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself. Up to the present, I've only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
Yes, I don't know that I am much interested in your family life.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Wilde.
How are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your pot of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course, yes. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
No, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you would come up for pleasure, like call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
Well, I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Now, one may be accepted, and one usually is, I believe. Then all the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. No, don't use the cucumber sandwiches. They're all especially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all the time.
Well, that's entirely a different matter. She is my aunt. Here. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
May I ask why? Why on earth would you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. The girls don't think it right.
That's nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth that accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And, well, in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Oh, your consent?
Well, my dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up this whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. We're really offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no use offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription on the inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read, a private cigarette case.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of that fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, a charming old lady she is too. Lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall. It is certainly a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case!
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest! It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I have ever met in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your card, so here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W1. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Earnest if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, I go by Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for why your small Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, you better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now, go on, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country? I may add, I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Bunburyist, and now I am quite sure.
Bunburyist? What do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation. And pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle out of motives of respect that you cannot possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is your place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I will tell you quite candidly, the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspect that, dear fellow. I have bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Oh, literary criticism is not your forte, dear fellow, but don't try it. Especially to those who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. No, what you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother in order that you may be able to go into town whenever you like. I have invented a perfectly invaluable invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. Why, if it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I really have been engaged on to custom in more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. But it is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
Oh, I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin, I dined there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am treated as a member of the family. And either sent down with no women at all, or 2. In the third place, I know perfectly well who she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Melly Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. Well, that sort of thing is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent, and that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands across the dinner table, it's perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a secret confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I am going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know a Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing a Bunbury is a very tedious time.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You seem to forget that in married life 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home is proven in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only creditors or relatives ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. If I get her out of the way for 10 minutes in order that you may be able to propose to Gwendolyn, might I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
No, yes, but you must be serious about it. Well, I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
I hope you are behaving very well, Algernon.
I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
Not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Well, dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we're a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looked quite 20 years younger. Now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit here?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane!
Ah.
Why were there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market today, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury. Seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned white gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Thank you. I've a real treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman, and so devoted to her husband. It's quite delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Oh, I hope not, Algernon. Oh, it would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a terrible disappointment, and I need hardly say a great more, but the fact is I have just received a telegram to say my poor friend Bunbury is dreadfully ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Oh, yes, poor Bunbury's a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury makes up his mind whether he's going to live or die. This shilly-shally with the business is illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle. He never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception. One wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. But I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. As for the music, of course, it is a great difficulty. Well, you see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run through the program I've drawn out if you'll join me in the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. The French songs I cannot possibly allow. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Hey, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax. Ever since I met you, I've always admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always held an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines. And has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've just made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
But honestly, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Earnest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say I think there are other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity anyone who was married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know I love you. And you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it!
Gwendolyn! Will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Oh.
How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
I own one. I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma! I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of that. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Yes, Mamma.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you, you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. Now, I am quite willing to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Well, I am pleased to hear it. I don't approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Yeah, that is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
Well, I do own a house in the country with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that point could be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I do own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let to the year by Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can give it back whenever I like. That 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, that's no guarantee of respectability of character. What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Well, both if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I am afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us. Or they come in the evening, at any rate. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Or to lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He must have been a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I am afraid I really don't know. The truth is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost both my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say my parents seem to have lost me. I don't know who I actually am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Oh, where did the charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom? At Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
Oh, the line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you just told me. To be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then, what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
Well, I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible. And to produce, as
produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What is it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and to form an alliance with a parcel? Good day, Mr. Wilde.
Good day. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Elton! Oh, idiotic you are! Did it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say she refused you? She's always refusing people. I know it's the way she has. I think it is most ill-natured of her. Gwendolen is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. Oh, I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I'm not going to argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there is any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in about 150 years?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
Oh, we do.
Well, I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Why, the clever people, of course.
What fools?
Did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth is not the sort of thing one tells to a sweet, innocent, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty. Or to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
By the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Well, yes, but it is hereditary. It's a sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
You are sure severe chill is not hereditary or anything of the kind?
No, of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you had said, wasn't Miss Cardew a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest when she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I'm happy to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Well, have you told Gwendolen about your having an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one does not blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like, half an hour after they have met, They would be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that after they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we want to get a good table of witnesses, we really must go and dress.
It's nearly 7, oh. Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House, Wilde, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Oh, thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir. Today's bills.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back until Monday, so you can put up my smoking jacket, dress clothes, all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is. Sir.
Oh, Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused at?
Well, I'm just anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does. The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cicely, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Muta sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are! I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Mr. Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh, no, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Well, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town.
Yeah, we do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not keep Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, Mary. Drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Oh, Miss
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany, W1. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him?
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You're my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, no, I'm not wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
Now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
Well, it is far pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment in London that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
Well, no, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
The accounts I have received of the next world and of Australia are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not that. That's why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
Oh, that is Because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thanks. What, might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A vegetable meal?
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Well, because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up until the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man can convert himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally.
Oh, yes.
My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Well, perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
Oh, Mr. Worthing. This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead!
Your brother Ernest? Dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No. He died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
But what was the cause of death, Major?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drops. Will the interment take place here?
No! No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would, no doubt, wish for me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent Among the Upper Orders.
That reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. Surely you know how to christen, all right? I mean, of course, you are constantly christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear Doctor. I am very fond of children, no. The fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any great doubts on this subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the whole thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Oh, not at all. No, the sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehension. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Oh, at what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
No, I think I'll trot round about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. Oh, in fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter, the most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do? Admirably.
Oh, and now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will intrude no longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so glad to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child.
Why, what is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache, and I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother, Earnest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
Oh, that is nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, these are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble that I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I find him coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me all about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. So often, and surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, he will not be talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that all the faults were on my side, but I must say I find Brother John's coldness to me to be peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time that I have ever been here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I shall never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never!
Well, this shall be the last time that I ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us?
Certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful action today, dear child.
Well, we must not be premature in our judgment.
I'm very happy.
You young scoundrel out here! You have got to leave this place as soon as possible! I don't allow any Bunbury here!
I have put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have!
I haven't heard anyone call on me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
Oh, I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
But I don't like your clothes. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying with you in your house as a guest.
You are not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unkind. If I was in mourning, you would stay with me, I hope. I should think it very unfriendly if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Oh, yes, if you do not take too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress. God, it was such little result.
Well, at any rate, it is better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally overdressed, I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Oh, your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd! However, you have got to catch the 4:05 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. And this Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go, and make arrangements for another Bunbury. There she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's going to get the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and quite openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may
Oh,
I?
no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. It appears in volume form. I hope you will order a copy. Pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since the first moment I looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Oh, darling.
The dog cart is waiting.
Tell him to come round next week, same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care for Uncle Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world except you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how on earth did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked of is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. Next day, I bought this little ring in your name. This bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Oh, did I buy you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. Excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do let me read them, Cecily.
I couldn't so badly spelled. Even now I can hardly read them without crying.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why did you break it off? What had I done, Cecily? I have done nothing at all. So I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke off our engagement. Especially when the weather was so charming.
It could hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, darling.
Oh, you dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others. You'll never break off our engagement again.
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
But my own sweet Cecily, do you mean to say you could not love me if I had some other name?
What name?
Well, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
My own sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not a bad name at all. It's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chance in bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But really, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here, I suppose, is thoroughly experienced in all rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important business.
Oh!
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Considering that we've been engaged since February the 14th, and that I've only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is! I like his hair so much! What's in his proposal in my diary?
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew. Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong. How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down. I may call you Cecily. May I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here, really.
Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I feel bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had another.
I'm sorry to say that they've not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dear Miss Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married!
My darling Cecily, I'm afraid there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. You would care to verify the incident, pray do, sir. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dearest Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you! This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in this vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I have no idea there are any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is, anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Oh, that is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I hear the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of
any other girl. There are no lengths to which I would not go. From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right. It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood. Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What would put such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may. I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing. I beg your pardon? This is Uncle Jack. Jack! Here is Ernest.
Cecily, darling.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what, young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may. I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Hardy. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief. Algernon Moncrief! Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us. My poor wounded Cecily. You will call me sister, won't you? There's just one question that I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian. An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn. Cecily. It is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I have ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced at doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you both quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone. It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it? Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there. No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunburying, I suppose?
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I have ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows this.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something in life if one wants to have any amusement at all. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. He won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as he used to do, dear Algy. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I find your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that to be quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, there's certainly no chance of your ever marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
That is no business of yours.
Well, if it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It was very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then, merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we are in this horrible trouble I can't make up? You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to enjoy them.
I say, it is perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to share them all in that greedy way.
Jack, have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Oh. Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go and having some dinner first.
No.
I never go anywhere without my dinner. No one ever does. Well, except vegetarians. People like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened under the name of Earnest at 6:15.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble this morning to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest, it is absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I've ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable that I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Well, yes, but I have not been christened in years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing upon it now. Well, it might make you very unwell. I need hardly remind you someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself a severe chill was not hereditary.
Well, it used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now.
Oh.
Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
It is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, you want after the muffins again? I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left.
But I hate DK!
Well, then why on earth do you allow it to be served to your guests?
No!
What ideas you have of hospitality!
No! I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't finished my tea yet!
No!
And there is still 1 muffin left!
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation. Does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject. But I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory. Especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes.
I mean, no. True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier, that is all.
Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. When questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling. Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young. physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her immediately by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I've never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But you must be quite aware, sir, that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
Nothing of the kind, sir. Now, as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
May I inquire if this is the house in which your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
No. Bunbury doesn't live here. In fact, Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
No, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation.
Aunt Augusta, I mean to say that he was found out. The doctors found out that he could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great respect for the opinion of his physician. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. Now that we have got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
Cecily and I are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I don't know if there is anything peculiarly exciting in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. And now I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cecily Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, 149 Belgrave Square, SW, at Gervase Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, North Britain.
That is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They're open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known of strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby? one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far I am satisfied.
How very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, confirmation, vaccination, and the measles. Both the German and the English variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I, myself, do not approve of premature experiences. Come, Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, only about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. Pleasure to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in the fund? Miss Cardew is a most attractive young lady now. So few girls of the present age have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear. A pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. We can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing. After 3 months, her own husband didn't know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, dear child. Oh, no, the side view is what I want. Oh, yes. Just as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high just at present. Now, there are distinct possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the prettiest, sweetest girl I ever saw. And I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Do not speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Come here, my dear. Of course, you know Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon, but I do not believe in mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
And for the future, you may address me as Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I think the marriage had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favor of long engagements. They allow people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you, but this engagement is out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one possibly desire?
It pains me very much to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew, but I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? No, impossible. He is an Oxonian. That means he went to Oxford.
I know what it means. But there can be no doubt about the matter at all. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my household by means of the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I have just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Perrier Jouet Brut, 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin! What makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the start that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and I do not intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Wilde, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell, but my decision is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, dear child. How old are you?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
Quite right to make some slight adjustment. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think that your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any concern.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but I think it only fair to tell you that, according to her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not legally come of age until she is 35.
But I do not see that as a grave concern. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Oh, dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which seems to me to display a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most happily allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must know that what you propose is out of the question.
Then, a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, may choose for himself. Come, dear, we have missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea's grotesque and irreligious, Algernon. I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew this was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand then that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptist. Views that I have completely refuted in four of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect? Remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardinal's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Despite what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for the last hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript for a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism! Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I must admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Oh, do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited that handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare hardly even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. It's hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Well, your guardian has a very emotional nature.
But this noise is very unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of every kind. They are always vulgar, often convincing.
Shh! It has stopped now.
Oh, I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
Suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, it seems to be mine. Oh, yes! There, here is the injury it received during the upsetting of our Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh, yes. And here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage. An incident that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. But the bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it. Yes! Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out one act of folly? Why must there be one more for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there has been some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell? I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all! I always said I had a brother! Cecily, how could you have ever doubted? I have a brother! Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother! Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother! Out! Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother! How dare you, young scoundrel, you! You've got to stop treating me with more respect in the future! You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life! Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I was out of practice, though.
My own?
Oh!
But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens! I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision upon the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change, except in my affections. What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta! A moment. At the the time Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could afford, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
I have been christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the moment recall. No doubt he had one. He was an eccentric, I'll admit, but that was in later years, and as a result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, other things.
Algy, can't you recall what our father's Christian name was?
Oh, my dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
Well, the general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I've no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the past 40 years are here! Oh, these delightful records should have been my constant study! Oh, let's see. M. Generals. Malum, Magby, Maxball. Oh, what ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief! Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General 1869. Christian names? Earnest John! I've always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is Earnest after all. I mean, it naturally is Earnest!
Yes, I recall now the general was called Earnest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking him.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
Oh, my own one. Letitia!
Frederick! At last!
Cecily, at last!
Gwendolyn, at last!
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've just now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.